Welcome. In this lecture, we're going to create a lobby level so that once we've created a game session, we'll travel to that level and wait for other players to join. We'll also specify a match type in our session settings so that once we've found sessions, we'll check to make sure that the session is configured for the correct match type before we join it. We'll then check the match type when we've found sessions, and then we'll get the IP address that we can travel to so we can join the session and travel to that lobby map on the hosting session. So first, let's create the lobby level. So here's our menu system project, and we'd like to create a lobby level. So I'm going to go to the Maps folder in third-person CPP. That's where we have our third-person example map. And we're going to make a new lobby level and place it here. So I'm going to go to File, New Level, and select the default level. So we have this default level, and first I'm going to select the floor and scale it in the X and Y directions. Let's go ahead and scale X and Y by 10 so we have some room to run around. Now I'm going to go to File and Save Current Level, and I'll go to Third-Person CPP and open the Maps folder, and I'm simply going to call this new level Lobby. So I'll click Save, and now we have this lobby level. Now I'd like to travel to this level as soon as I've created a session. So here in the Visual Studio project, I'm going to find the callback onCreateSessionComplete. Now all we're doing so far in this function is printing a message to the screen. But if B was successful is true, I'd also like to travel to the lobby level and open it as a listen server. This means we need the world. So I'm going to make a local uWorld pointer called world and initialize it with getWorld. And we'll go ahead and check to make sure world is valid before we use it. And then from the world class, we can simply call server travel. Now I'm going to pass in the F string using the path to our lobby level. Now I can easily get that path by right-clicking the lobby level asset and selecting Copy File Path. Now here in Visual Studio, I'm just going to paste in that path down here. Now, as we discovered before, we don't need the full path. Everything up to and including the content folder can simply be replaced by game. Now, after game, we have the third-person CPP folder, followed by maps and lobby. So we can add that to the string, and we don't need the .umap, as server travel already knows that this will be a .umap. Now, in addition to the path, we're going to specify an option using a question mark followed by listen. In this way, we'll call server travel, traveling to the lobby level, and opening that level as a listen server. So now that we have a lobby level, and as soon as we create a session, we'll open that level as a listen server and wait for other players to join, we can now specify a match type so we can check that type once we've found sessions. Now, our game may have different match types. For example, we may have a free-for-all game where each player plays against every other player. Or we may have a teams game where there are 2 or more teams and the teams are competing against each other. So we can specify some additional data in our session settings that we can check once we've found the session. To do that, we're going to use the session settings set function. And the set function allows us to set a key value pair associated with this session that we can check once we've found sessions. If I right-click on Set and peek the definition, I'll see that it's defined here in online session settings.cpp, and we see that the set function takes a key and a value. Now the key has to be an fname, and the value type can vary. Just below the definition for this function, we see the different types that this value can take on. We'll be using the fstring type. So here's how we can set that key value pair. We call the set function, and the first input will be an fname. Now we're going to call this match type. The key value pair doesn't have to specify a match type per se. We're just using this to define a match type, and we can use an fstring for the value and specify a string to define the match type. We're going to say free-for-all. And this way, as our game develops to have multiple match types, we can specify the key value pair in our session settings that we can check once we've found sessions. And that way, we'll be sure that we're only joining sessions that have the match type that we're searching for. Now we need to pass in at least one other argument, and that's of the type eOnline data advertisement type. And if we type the double colons, we'll see that we have various advertisement options here. We can advertise via the online service only or online service and ping. This means that our session will be advertised via the online service, but also via ping as well. So we've set a key value pair for our session in the session settings. Once we've found a session, we can check that. So let's check the match type to make sure we have the correct one. So down here in our onFindSessions complete callback, we have our search results, and we're looping through them and checking the ID and the username for that particular F-Online session search result. So as we're getting data from this search result, we can also check to see if it has a matching key value pair that we're looking for. So the way that we do that is we get our result and access the session from that result, and on the session, we check its session settings. We'll use the session settings get function. And get allows us to specify the key for the key value pair to check to see if it has that key. So we're going to pass in the fname with match type as the value. Now the get function expects a value type, so we can pass in an f string since that's the type for our value. So we're going to create an f string called match type, and we're going to pass that in. And the get function will fill in that match type f string if this particular session has the key match type. So if it does, it'll access the value and set our local match type variable to that value. So once we've done that, we can then see if that match type value equals free-for-all, which is the match type we specified up here in create game session. So there it is, free-for-all. So after we've printed the ID and username, I'm going to check this match type value. So I'm going to say if match type double equals f string free-for-all. So if the session we found has the key match type and its value is free-for-all, then we know we're joining a free-for-all match. And if we like, we can add an on-screen debug message here and say joining match type %s and use that match type variable. So we've checked the match type on the found session. It's now time to figure out which IP address we should travel to. Now, in order to get the IP address we should travel to, we're going to need to join the session. So once we've determined that we've found a match with the correct match type, we can join it. And we'll do that here in this if statement. Now, this will involve calling the session interface function joinSession, which means we're going to need to set up a delegate and a callback to respond to joining the session. So let's go back to menusystemcharacter.h and create a new delegate and a callback. Now, the delegate for joinSession is going to have the type f on joinSession complete delegate. So we'll call this joinSession complete delegate. And we'll need a callback for this. We'll stick it up here in the protected section, and it's going to be a void function, and we'll call this onJoinSessionComplete. Now, the input parameters for a function that can be bound to this type of delegate are an fname called sessionName, and the second input is of type eOnJoinSessionCompleteResult : type. And this is called result. So once we've joined a session, our callback will be passed in the session name and this eOnJoinSessionCompleteResult type. And if we remove the type and one of the colons and replace that second colon, we can see the options in this enum. We see already in session, could not retrieve address, session does not exist, session is full, or success. And of course, we have this unknown error. So this enum exists to inform us of the join session complete result, so we know if we've successfully joined a session or not. So we're going to use type for the type for this input. Now let's go ahead and create a function body for this. So here's our callback. And the last thing to do is to bind this callback to this delegate here. So let's go back up to our constructor in the CPP file, and we'll construct our delegate and bind the callback here. So I'm going to add another comma, and on this next line, I'm going to get my join session complete delegate and use f on join session complete delegate create uObject. And just like before, we're going to pass in this for the user class and the address of with this class, followed by our callback, which is on join session complete. So we've now constructed the delegate and bound our callback to it. Now, of course, we want our callback to be called, which means we need to add this delegate to the session interface's delegate handle. So let's go down to our onFindSessionsComplete function. And since we plan on calling join session down here in our check to see if our match type is correct, we're going to add the delegate to the session interface delegate list. And this means we need to check to see if our online session interface pointer is valid. So we'll do that up at the very top of this function. So we're going to say if not online session interface dot is valid, and we will simply return if it's not valid. So now we can access it down here in our if statement. So to add the delegate to the delegate list, we're going to say online session interface, and we're going to use the function add on join sessions complete delegate handle, passing in the delegate join session complete delegate. So now our callback will be called after joining sessions has been completed. So the last thing to do is call join session. Now, join session is going to need the f-unique net ID. So just like we've done in our other functions, we're going to copy this line where we get the local player from the world using get first local player from controller. So let's get that line and we'll paste it down here. And then we can get our online session interface and call join session. Now we need that unique net ID, so we're going to use the dereference operator and use local player get preferred unique net ID. Now join session also needs the name of the session. Now remember, we're hard coding the global variable name underscore game session. And join session also requires a search result of type f online session search result. Now we know that if we've reached the inside of this if statement, we are currently on the loop iteration where result is a correct result. It has the key value pair with the value free for all. So we can pass in this result. So we've now called join session. Now that we've called join session, we need to wait for this action to complete, after which our on join session complete callback will be called in response. Now this is where we can get that IP address to join. So we'll be using our online session interface. So we're going to check to see if that's valid. So if online session interface dot is valid, and of course we're using the negation operator here. So if it's not valid, we will return. And now we can get the IP address. Now to get the IP address, we get our online session interface, and we call the function getResolved connect string. And getResolved connect string has an overload that takes an f name for the session name and an f string for the connect info. So for the f name, we're going to pass in name game session. And the f string is passed in by reference because this function will fill in that string with the address we need. So we're going to create a local f string called address, and we'll simply pass in address. Now getResolvedConnectString says returns the platform-specific connection information for joining the match. And it says call this function from the delegate of join completion. That's what we're doing. We're in onJoinSessionComplete, which will be called once joining a session has been completed. Now getResolvedConnectString returns a Boolean, and this will be false if something has gone wrong. So we're going to check if, and we'll only enter this if statement if getResolvedConnectString returns true. If it has, I'd like to print that connect string so we can see it. So let's go back and copy our add on-screen debug message call and paste one in here. And I'd like to use yellow for the color for this. And for our string, we'll just say connect string, and we'll pass in address here. So we can see what that string looks like. So now that we have the address and we've actually joined the session, it's time to travel to that address so we can join the lobby with the hosting player. Now, in order to travel to this address, we need to call client travel. And client travel is a function on the player controller. So we're going to make a local A player controller. That's a pointer. We'll call this player controller. And we're going to get this player controller from the game instance. So we're going to get the game instance with get game instance. And from the game instance, we're going to call get first local player controller. Now, once we've gotten the player controller, we can make sure it's not null. So we can say if player controller, and if we have a valid player controller, we can call client travel. So we're going to say player controller, client travel, and we're going to pass in the address, followed by the travel type. So travel type, and we're going to use travel absolute. Now, again, we're going to talk about these travel types, but for now, we're just going to use travel absolute. So we now have the ability to join a game session, and once the join game session action is completed, we can then get the connect string, that's the address we need to travel to using client travel. So let's go ahead and compile our code here. And after a successful compile, we'll jump back into the editor here, and let's go ahead and save everything and package our game. So let's go to Platforms, Windows, and Package Project. And again, I'm going to delete the previous build and select this build folder and package the project. Okay, so now that packaging is complete, I'm going to find my build folder, and there's my new build. Now, I still have the old zipped up build from the previous time we packaged the game. I'm going to delete that and zip up this new build. So I'm going to go to send to compressed zipped folder. And now that I have a freshly zipped up build, I'm going to remove this old build from my Google Drive by right-clicking and selecting Remove, and I'll upload my newly zipped up packaged build. Okay, so I've packaged the game and zipped it up and uploaded this onto my Google Drive, and I've downloaded it and unzipped it on my other machine. Now, I have a tester on my other machine who has launched the game and pressed the 1 key. So on the other machine, they have created a session and they're hosting waiting for me in the lobby level opened as a listen server. So I can go ahead and launch my packaged game here. And from my machine, I can press the 2 key to join their game. So I'm going to press the 2 key, and I see that I've joined the game and we can both play together. Now, this works both ways. So my tester has hosted the game on my other machine. They've created a Steam session and I've joined it from this side. But we can actually launch the game from this machine and host a game session, and my tester on the other machine can join my game session. So we're going to do that. So I've closed my game session, and now I'm going to create a session from this machine. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my game. And on my machine, I'm going to hit the 1 key. So now I have created a session, and I can host and wait for my tester on my other machine to join. So on my other machine, they are going to press the 2 key, and now they have joined my game session. And now we can both play together on the session that I've hosted on my machine. So this just goes to show that the way we've set this up, we can create a game session hosted by Steam on any machine, and Steam will register the IP address of the person who is hosting the game. And when another player joins, they will search for sessions, and Steam will inform them of any game sessions that are being hosted by Steam, and then we can join that session. So now we no longer need to know the IP address of the person we'd like to play with. All we need to do is either host or join a session. Perfect. So we now have the ability to connect two instances of the game over the internet hosted by Steam. Now, in the next video, we're going to get started creating the plugin for this system so that we can add this plugin to any project and get that functionality so we don't have to recreate it every time we make a new multiplayer game. So this will involve setting up the delegates and the callbacks on a new class designated for handling all of the session-related functionality. So in this video, we created a lobby level and we created a match type to associate with our particular session, and we did this using the session settings. We also joined the game session and traveled to the correct IP address using client travel. So we now have an understanding of the session interface and the various functions that we can use on the interface to connect to game sessions. So we're ready to create our plugin and put all of the session code into its own specialized class so we don't have to crowd up the character class with network code because that's not where it belongs. So we'll get started with that in the next lecture. I'll see you soon.